Thank you for joining us after lunch. We'll try and keep the session lively and interesting on a topic that hopefully is relevant for all of you in the room. So without further ado, let me bring on the panel. So if you all come through, we have Sophia Rödiger, who is the founder and CEO of bloXmove. We have Toby Goodden, who's the product owner and solution lead for Energy Web Foundation. And last but very much not least, we have Sabine Brink, who is the global blockchain lead for Shell. Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to kick off with a question to you, Sabine, which is really just about how you see blockchain being a game changer in our ability to increase low carbon energy sources.
Yeah, good, great. Thanks everyone for joining in, and thanks for the partners here and joining us on stage. So my name is Sabine Brink and I lead the global blockchain team within Shell. How is blockchain going to be a game changer? To me, I think we're in a very special time at the moment. If we think about the next 10 years, to me, they're driven by two major trends and two really important ones. Number one is the energy transition, right? The energy transition, the phase that we're in right now, and the urgency that we have to get to a net zero economy. I think it's the most exciting and also the most urgent topic to be working on. The second one to me is digital transformation. And digital transformation is not just about blockchain, but it is around how do we utilize the digital tools that we have, like IoT, blockchain, high performance computing, AI, to all come together and really design the new energy system of the future. And in order to do that, I think we will need blockchain as a fundamental core technology to help as this underpinning for orchestration and collaboration. The energy transition will not be done by one person, one country, or one company as an individual. It will be done by a collaborative effort of the whole world working together. And to me, a technology like blockchain, which is decentralized, distributed in nature, will be a perfect tool to help us and enable that future direction.
Thank you, Sabine. Toby, turning to you, you're, I won't use the phrase coalface because it would be very inappropriate, but you're at the front end of some of these applications. Tell us a little bit about where you see blockchain being a game changer in the real world.
Yeah, so there's a lot of applications out there now that we're working on. I think blockchain allows to verify and track the production, exchange, and usage consumption. So the whole supply chain of green energy products, be this electricity that's generated from renewable sources, be this hydrogen fuel that has been produced using clean energy. Also, we're working to greenify the Bitcoin network as well. So we're verifying with mining pools that they're actually utilizing clean energy consumption as they mint these new Bitcoin tokens. And we're then creating and verifying and producing these green-proof tokens that we transfer to the wallet of the mining pool. So they are able to be coupled to the actual Bitcoin and prove that this Bitcoin was minted using green electricity. The point is we can, there's solutions out there you can verify and prove the greenness of nearly everything, nearly any green product throughout the whole supply chain. And I think also powering this is the ability to give every single entity that interacts with the electricity system an identity. So we're working to give them all digital identifiers, DIDs, all the way from batteries, electric vehicles, outlet points, inlet points, all the way through to EV drivers, to users, to organizations. So all of these players have their own digital identity. They're then able to securely transfer data, securely interact with the grid, express their attributes, and allow themselves to receive data or be controlled by other members with their DIDs, because you're proving the authentication of this. So that's another area where we're really progressing towards a really interactive, decentralized electricity system.
Sophia, how about in your experience? Where are the game-changing areas for blockchain?
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned many important words like supply chain, and we often say blockchain makes it possible that we shift from a supply chain, more to supply networks. Sabine, you mentioned that no one can do it alone. So at the end, we see that blockchain makes it easier and makes the access easier that new actors play with each other. And we have a lot of strong partners on the energy side, and now we unite them, for example, with the mobility side. This is why bloXmove is coming in. When had founded the company last year, and this is where we believe decentralized node infrastructure is the answer for exactly secured, automated communication between all the parties. Because as we see, ecosystems are growing and we need all of these partners. This is maybe my last sentence as addition.
So that's a perfect sequence into what I was going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about, actually all of you, but I'll start with you, Sophia. What does bloXmove do? What's your role in this big picture of node mobility use that you were just describing there?
Yeah, good question. First of all, I'm CEO and founder in bloXmove, so that's my role. What is bloXmove's role in that? So the interesting story behind bloXmove is that we are a management buyout from Mercedes. So we incubated the entire technology mobility blockchain platform more than 3 years in an ecosystem with a corporate. That was, first of all, the interesting fact and role. Then we did that management buyout because we realized such a decentralized network, this is not possible to drive that in a corporate like Daimler. So you need a neutral touch, so to say, reduce the smell of a big company like Daimler. And this was the reason why we bought it out, and now we're an independent startup. And what we do in that entire setup is, first of all, you mentioned already DID, so that we have an DID, an identity for batteries in the car. Then the vehicles, like a scooter, like a bus, a train, whatever mobility vehicle you choose. And now we want to link all these transport operators, because what we want to change at the end is it's more kind of mobility roaming experience. Right now we see a trend of aggregation. So you have a super app like Free Now or Uber, and they try to integrate all the transport operators or drivers. And the drivers have a lose-lose situation because they lose your touch point, and also they have to pay for that integration. And this can change on blockchain technology, because at the end, the entry point doesn't matter. You can choose your favorite scooter app, you choose a favorite, I don't know, London Underground app, and at the end, you roam through an ecosystem because it's connected in the back. This is what we do with bloXmove, bringing in the mobility competence. Let's call it like that.
Thank you so much, and that's better. You can hear me now. So, Toby, tell us a little bit more about the Energy Web Foundation.
The Energy Web Foundation is it's both a global non-profit, but it's also a tech startup, which is quite a funny combination. But we're trying to walk that line. And what we do primarily is we build infrastructure using Web3 technology. So this is blockchain. This is decentralized identifiers, as you were talking about. This is just decentralized logic execution. So our goal is to build this Web3 infrastructure and work with enterprises to unlock the business value that comes with that. We're aware that blockchain was overhyped, and there's maybe, we found 200 ways not to use blockchain, and that was a great learning experience. But we found 3 or 4 ways where you really can use Web3 technology and blockchain to really make a difference and unlock value and accelerate the energy transition. So that's our goal. And
so, in your role, Sabine, you are the global blockchain lead for Shell. But tell us a little bit more about actually what Shell is doing day in, day out in this space.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I think I have one of the most awesome jobs in this space at the moment. Today, you obviously get a bit of a sense of what's happening across the energy sector with bloXmove, with Energy Web, and I think still today there's so much underutilized potential of what the energy sector can do as a whole with things like blockchain, decentralized tech, etc. So for us, accelerating this space from a corporate perspective is really exciting. We started out with this journey on blockchain and decentralized tech in 2016 already, so quite early on. We decided that at that point it was the right moment to say, hey, we believe that this technology will have quite a disruptive impact on the energy sector and can really, improve current processes that we have, but it can also really change energy value chains, because like Sophia mentioned, it's a new way of bringing new but also existing partners together in the energy sector to collaborate. And that can be pretty disruptive. And also our vision in this is that blockchain has the ability to create new markets. So just like what we've seen with the internet early on, in the last, let's say, 15 years, we've seen this explosion of internet-based companies coming into the world and literally changing the way we live, work, and play. Well, we also believe that blockchain and decentralized technologies can have that same kind of effect in the next 10 years or so. So for us, it's really important that we want to develop projects, both in partnership with other companies. We co-founded the Energy Web Foundation as an example, because we really believe in that neutral infrastructure to drive forward the energy sector. And we also invest in different startups and different communities, like through our Shell Ventures arm, we've invested in LO3 Energy, which is a company focused on microgrids, etc. Maybe one of the core examples of how we're using this is twofold. So one, we really believe in the facilitation and the automation of transactions in the energy sector. So, for example, supply chains. Today, as companies, we all have our databases in silos behind our walls, and we facilitate these transactions across the energy sector for, let's say, supply chain good or settlements of invoices. But the moment that that data leaves the boundaries of our company, that reconciliation of data is a lot of effort still today. And we've done so much work in digitalizing and going through digital transformations within our companies, so everyone in the energy sector, but now it's really time to go beyond those company borders. So things like digital passport for supply chains, so material tracking. So we've got live pilots running where we create a much more efficient way of exchanging materials and verifying the origin. The second area for us is really transparency of energy. And there we're working with companies like the Energy Web and many others to create a lot more energy efficient, but also a lot more transparent energy trains across the world. So there's a couple of things we're working on.
Amazing. You must be a very busy lady.
Well, there's a whole team behind us, so it's really exciting.
Always a team. So I wanted to just start a slightly different track, which is lots of us who are not sort of deeply into the space as you three are, have some maybe misconceptions about blockchain and its impact. So let's do a little bit of myth busting. What are the things that you think are the sort of biggest misconceptions that people have about blockchain, particularly in relation to energy?
I don't mind hitting that one off. There's quite a couple. To me, I think the education part is absolutely important across the whole energy sector when we're talking about blockchain. And I think for me, the most common question that I think we all get is, wait, blockchains use so much energy and are so energy intensive. Why would we use them to help accelerate the energy transition? So for us, that is a big myth, because yes, there are blockchains like, for example, Bitcoin that uses proof of work, which is a energy intense way at the moment to create that stability or that finalization of the transactions in the network. But you have a lot more energy efficient ways to do it. So Ethereum is just in the process of moving to proof of stake. We also have things like proof of authority. For us, one of the big blockchains we're using is the Energy Web Chain because it's so energy efficient. So that to us is a real myth that we'd really love to bust within the energy sector to make sure we get through this. So maybe you want to elaborate a bit more on how you guys do it.
Couldn't agree more with that issue. I mean, yes, it's true that the Bitcoin is very energy intensive, but I think, as you said, that is using proof of work, which is designed in nature on purpose to be very high computational power. And that's the way it stops anyone controlling 51% of the network. There's other methods that Ethereum is switching to, proof of stake, which uses the amount staked in the network to prevent this 51% attack. Or in Energy Web, what we're using is proof of authority, which is where you have almost like a round robin system, and you select the next validated node based on this. This works really well when you have a lot of trusted, well-known validators, which Shell is one of these. And actually, if you look at the Energy Web chain itself, the actual energy efficiency, if it had the same transaction throughput and adoption as a MasterCard, would use even less energy consumption than powering the whole MasterCard network. So yeah, that is it's a good preconception to tackle, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see it's important to elaborate and look into that field from different angles, right? Often the problem is we use hype words like Bitcoin or metaverse for everything, and then this is blockchain. But you can see it here in a few sentences how diverse it is, right? And for example, if we compare it now with bloXmove, we are a layer 2 technology based on those mainnets. So it's even more complex, right? And this is right now the issue. You mentioned already education. It is already better. We see that many companies are educated, but we have a long way to go, I would say. And for example, with all the hype topics like NFT or Bored Ape, yeah, for sure you could say this is nonsense and ugly, colorful pictures, but you can use that mechanism like NFT mechanism, for example, and can also use it for tickets, for e-tickets, yeah, for non-manipulating tickets, for events, for example, link it to carbon zero certification, for example, if you do an event, an online event, or another topic, we use it, for example, for mobility budget, yeah, that you link it really to an amount of money which you can use for all you can move in London, for example. So there are definitely real-life use cases, and this is important. But for sure, we are in the very beginning of that technology, right? Some people compare it with 1998 of the internet. So let's see.
Well, that's where the education piece is fundamental. You've all talked about that, haven't
Yeah.
you? Sophia, I'm going to stay with you, if I may, and dig in a little bit to the energy and mobility space, because the questions I might ask would be, why do we need blockchain at all? So, you know, what's the use case for blockchain in that context?
Yeah. I mean, from technology perspective, you can dig deeper into that. But why we use that, I started related to the first question. I spoke about many actors in that game, and why is that interesting for us? We work, for example, on cases like vehicle to building or vehicle to grid. Why we're doing that? If we speak about renewable energy, you have one issue. Today the sun is shining, but maybe tomorrow it's rainy, and you cannot switch on and off the so to say button for the sunshine, for the energy. So you need smart.
Can't in the UK.
Exactly, and same in Germany. So you need smart ways of new ways for storage, yeah, the capacity, so to say. And now the battery in the car is super powerful in future. I don't know if you know this, but for example, one Nissan Leaf can take care of the energy consumption of one household for a week. So it's really powerful. It's not that we need tons of, I don't know, cars and big fleets. So it's really powerful. And now think exactly that role in that ecosystem. You have cars, like a private household, for example. You have maybe company vehicles where an employer is paying for your load when you are working for Shell, for example. But when you're driving home, connect your car with a smart home, and then you maybe use the energy for your wash machine. Why should Shell pay for that? And now you need a new smart infrastructure where you can split those transactions and amounts. And this is why we believe decentralized technology is exactly the right answer for that. You cannot manage that with central databases and interfaces or APIs or something like that. This, for example, a use case where we come in and why bloXmove is bringing the mobility expertise in that ecosystem.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Toby, if I may, how do you see the correct infrastructure being key to accelerating energy transition?
Yeah, I think in our few years of experience creating infrastructure for enterprises, we found that the ideal situation would have both a private network benefits and also the public network benefits. So a more private permission network, you have application-specific use case, you have application-specific governance, you have the business logic of the network is designed specifically for this application. All of the validators are participants in this area, and it's permissioned and it's private. However, that's costly to spin up. It means that every time you want to build one of these, you have to start from scratch, more or less. And also, you don't have the security and the trust and also the finality provided by utilizing a large public network. You also don't get a share in the ecosystem benefits if you're on a private permission network. So we've been working with Parity, which are some of the biggest developers in the Web3 space. They built Polkadot ecosystem, and we're working with them to build a solution where we have various different parachains, which are governed and controlled by the participants, which are a bit like private networks. but then they connect and feed their finality, so their next block is validated by a large, highly staked consortia relay chain in the center. So it's actually the benefits of both you're getting here. And I think furthermore, to add on that, every time a new parachain is added to the consortia relay chain, you reap the benefits of the functionality of this parachain. So if I'm here building a 24/7 clean energy matching parachain, I have the finality of the entire consortia relay chain and the security, but I also, if someone else has built a identity or verification specific parachain here, I can communicate with this parachain as well. And I don't have to build these functionality or aspects in my own private network. I can connect and share the greater benefits of this entire ecosystem. So we really feel like we found the sweet spot. And we're going to be rolling this out in the coming year. And we really hope enterprises love it and it works well. We will see.
Thank you.
Is it okay to just jump in on this one as well? Because I think you touched on a really important point, right? The whole concept of relay chains and just the maturity of the overall industry adopting blockchains. And I think for people to grasp where we've come from, like why we're here now, it's important to grasp where we've come from, because I think the first, let's say, 5 or 6 years in blockchain development, a lot of enterprises had focused on only private chains, public was scary. Don't touch public. It was like the internet versus the intranet at the time, right? Everyone wanted to control and keep it to themselves. I think from our perspective, we've always seen that in the longer term, we will all benefit more from shared open infrastructure, public networks that can really be utilized without one centralized governance that controls it. So I think where we've seen in the first couple of years of blockchain development, it's been a lot of focus on private networks, which have become sort of like the new little islands that have been forming around different sectors. Whereas now I think the maturity of getting to this place where we're trying to create a win-win of both, so utilizing zero-knowledge proofs, utilizing relay chains, and getting the benefits of both public, but also making sure that there is a privacy-centric element to it, it really lowers the adoption for enterprises to get on board. And I hope that really accelerates in the next 5 years of how we get there.
Fantastic. And if I may stay with you, Sabine, I was going to ask you about the role of blockchain in low carbon energy certification, particularly in terms of sort of tracking through every transaction stage. Give us a sense of how far advanced we are there.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the killer use cases in blockchain and energy. To me, when we look at the overall energy sector, right, we are going through a transformation. So previously, the energy sector was obviously, I would say, quite linear. And, energy was being produced in one place and it was being distributed and consumed in the next place. And I think the transformation that we're currently going through is that the energy sector is becoming a lot more decentralized and a lot more distributed, because we are getting a lot more sources added to the energy mix, right? We've got solar panels on our roofs now. We've got electrical vehicles driving around that are pretty much batteries that can offer services to the energy sector. We've got wind on the North Sea, and we've got biofuels in the mix and hydrogen coming along. So you can imagine the amount of complexity of different players, but also different sources all coming in, and with us having the common goal to all decarbonize and achieve net zero. So not an easy task for maybe just a couple of centralized players to hold on to. So for us, the aspect of transparency in the energy sector is absolutely key. So more and more, I believe, or for me personally, and I think we see that with our customers, it's, how do I prove that hydrogen I'm going to procure is actually green? Or is it coming from non-sustainable sources? Biofuels, how do I track that through the supply chain? Where is it all coming from? Or electricity, how am I actually sure it's green that I'm procuring? So what blockchain creates for us here is the ability to tokenize energy at the source of where it's created. So being a windmill on the North Sea, straight from smart meters, gather that data, create a tokenized representation, which is your digital certificate. And through that, we create a proof of this was being created or generated at a certain time, at a certain location, and it's being distributed through the electricity grid and consumed at the end of the day. So blockchain to us really provides a more transparent means of seeing, hey, what is the characteristic of energy? And also not being dependent on a lot of intermediaries in different markets, but rather a much more transparent, fluid way of transferring these electricity certificates or biofuel electricity certificates across the ecosystem. So for us, 24/7 matching is one of the key parts. So we've just launched a product based on open source technology of the energy web chain. This basically gives large corporates the ability to real-time match their electricity consumption with the generation of electricity. So the utility of blockchain here means that we do not have any double counting in the system. Electrons cannot be consumed twice, and we have a completely sort of closed loop way of proving at a half-hourly basis what corporates are actually using. And I think it's important to note with that is that in today's world with normal certification, you can only do this on a yearly basis. So getting that kind of insight, that granularity is, I think, a key requirement in our energy sector going forward.
These are fantastic, what I'd call sort of good news stories about what we can use blockchain for. Just playing devil's advocate slightly, I wanted to ask you all what you think the barriers to adoption are currently. And maybe Toby, can I start with you? Where would you see the barriers to adoption?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of barriers in terms of the ecosystem, for example. I think there's some missing puzzle pieces. I think there's a lot of competitors in certain spaces that seem exciting and fun to build, like self-sovereign identity solutions and these type of things. But there's a large gaps in certain areas of finishing the puzzle, where connecting that to the enterprise databases and the enterprise systems and their login systems and their credentialing, and overcoming the barriers of enterprises don't want to have volatile tokens on their books. Completely fair enough, and they shouldn't really have to, right? Enterprises want a software as a service type of payment solution where they know how much it's going to cost, they know what they're buying, and I think that's completely fair enough. And enterprises also, they don't want their employees or users having to set up private and public keys and manage those themselves, interface with a MetaMask Web3 wallet. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to go into connecting this Web3 world with traditional, conventional industry and enterprise solutions.
Would you agree with that, Sophia?
Absolutely, but also this is one dimension. The other dimension is really, Sabine mentioned that, the rethinking in how we understand roles in that I do business with someone else. Right now it's really I'm Shell or I'm Daimler, I have the power in that ecosystem. And this will change because in future, if we make it accessible for more and more actors in that ecosystem, it should be in communication or interaction on eye level, right? And not someone or one person is ruling that ecosystem. And this is a big shift right now because at the end we have strong aggregators in the front right now, and they will lose power. And this is always tricky, right? In systems, if people, there's a functionality why it is like that, yeah. And we make a radical change here, and this is, I would say, the second dimension. Blockchain is nothing which you can, plug in or flange. I don't know. It's really something new. You have to make it redesign that from scratch. And this is hard because we have legacy in the companies already, existing IT infrastructure. And this is the tricky point, the trouble, so to say, which we have to manage. Yeah.
So I'm going to come to Sabine in one sec to give another perspective to that question. But before I do, just a warning that I will be asking you for questions. So if anyone's got any burning questions on their mind, I'll be coming to you in just one moment. But before I do, I did want to give Sabine, and not so much as the representative of every large enterprise, it feels like a rather grand title to have to respond to, but just, from the other side of that coin, what do you think the barriers are to adoption?
Well, I think it's important to note, so I recognize what everyone's saying here, right? Like, integrating into legacy systems, how do we implement change processes, the whole change journey? That's, of course, something that we all have to go through in digital transformations. But I think it's always important when we see such a disruptive technology to take a step back and see what's actually happening in the world right now. And we are going through a cultural revolution in my mind. And I think some people might know it, some people might feel it's happening, some people might not see it yet, but we're moving from the whole concept of a Web 2 centralized world to a Web 3 decentralized world. And then that new world, we're going to have more community-owned platforms. We're going to have democratization of data. We're going to have transparency. And if you focus on that future vision where the world is heading, I think it's much easier to bring companies and businesses along when you focus on that goal in itself. So to me, the barriers to adoption is where people are trying to take this really disruptive technology and then say, well, hey, but it doesn't fit in my process that I have today. So how do I do this? Where actually we have to be like, we're on this bigger journey, not just us as a company, but a lot of companies together, and focus on how can we make a step change rather than just an incremental improvement.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Anybody got any questions? Okay, fantastic. Alan here at the front. Do you have a microphone? Amazing, thank you. If you could pop it over to Alan here, and then we'll start. And please do introduce yourself briefly, Alan, first.
I'm not sure I can do that, Priya. I think I'll leave that to you. Alan Greenberg, I used to work for Anyway, it doesn't matter. First of all, can I compliment the panel on describing something hugely complex in a really eloquent way? My compliments to all three of you. But can I just test the synopsis a little bit? If we have a fundamental opportunity around trust, I think that is a key component of what you're all discussing. I'm curious to see what you feel about quantum computing, given that is just around the corner, given that quantum computing can also be an asset to drive what you've all been talking about, but it also could be an opportunity to break the blockchain. And I'm curious on where you are in the context of where quantum will actually impact on what you've been discussing.
That's a great question, Alan. Toby, I'm going to pick on you,
Yep.
if I can.
Yeah. That's a really great question. I think, quantum computing has the ability to completely break down all of the cryptography that we have today that is essential to blockchain and any encryption-specific system. Is it possible to have quantum-proof encryption? I actually don't know. I'm assuming yes. You probably know the answer to that question. Is it then possible to implement that quantum-proof encryption into the blockchain solutions we have today? We'll have to find that out. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I do think it could be possible. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be a killer, but it absolutely has to adapt.
Alan, I'm going to ask the gentleman over there for his question. Sorry, we'll have time to chat afterwards, I'm sure. At the end there, thank you.
Hi, Anthony Leddy from Circularity First. Not quite as intellectual question as that, but you've talked about particularly tracking energy use. And when we look at carbon in particular, and we think about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, a lot of people are really leaning into the challenges of scope 3, which is thinking about that whole supply chain. I like the use of the word supply network. But what applications do we think we can see for blockchain in physical assets? Because so much of our world today is about consuming products, physical things. How can blockchain be used in that environment to see how we can be more carbon efficient going forward?
Yeah.
Sabine?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, I feel bad. Apologies. I've been working this way the whole time, but there's a whole extra sector. So switching now. Yeah, to me, I think you're completely right. We're doing a lot of work, I think, overall in the sector on the concept of scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. Blockchain is an amazing, I think, transparent application for us to use in that sector, right? So, for example, we're working on a really exciting project as well to decarbonize heavy-duty industries. And there you have a lot of the transparency of scope 1, 2, 3, where you have all these actors working together and you need to exchange that kind of data, right? So that's one example. I would say when you transfer that same kind of concept to physical goods, there's I think a lot of work ongoing in trying to get down to the actual granularity of a product. Can you create complete circularity and create a digital identity on a product level and track the data from across how it's being manufactured to how it's being distributed to how it's being consumed in that way? And it's hard to imagine that one centralized company can hold all that data regarding that complete end-to-end supply chain. So blockchain offers more opportunity to exchange or to add that data to a product level, given like a digital passport, whilst each company does not have to transport all their data in that centralized database, but create a distributed way of sharing that data. So at the end, you have a complete product history, but you don't have the need for centralization. And to me, it's a really exciting part. I would say the challenge in that is how do you get the track and trace on the right level of granularity for each and every product? And what is the value of going down in every single level? So batteries, I think, is a great use case. And I think we should be thinking about how deep do you go into that data granularity to achieve the results you need for decarbonization.
I was actually going to bring Sophia in on the same question for exactly that reason, because I think you've got a great perspective on this.
Exactly, but I think you answered it in a perfect way. And maybe also related to your question, at the end, it needs smart solutions on all dimensions. So on the hardware dimension and also software dimension. Blockchain is the software, right? But it needs a good proof point which data come to the blockchain. Otherwise, you have stupid and wrong data, and then it's immutable in the blockchain. So it's really a smart new ecosystem design, also with product hardware side, which we have to redesign or find good adapter solutions and wallet solutions. So it needs both, right? Blockchain is not the secret sauce for everything and will save the world, right? That's also important to understand, yeah. But good question, thank you.
Any other questions? There's a gentleman in the middle there.
Hello there, thank you very much for the interesting panel so far. Yeah, I have a question actually. I was just wondering what you might consider some of the challenges and implications relating to transaction cost, particularly in some of the end-to-end scenarios and the mobility scenarios that you'd mentioned.
Why don't you take that first, Sophia, if I may, in terms of the mobility scenario? How do you see cost bearing out?
A very important question. From technology perspective, again, I give that ball to you, Toby. And this is, again, a topic where I said earlier, you have to understand blockchain on different layers and stack levels, so to say. Because, for example, in our case, as I said, bloXmove is in layer 2 technology. So we use totally different mechanism for proving transactions. And therefore, we have different cost structure. It's not like that we run each and every time a transaction on an Ethereum chain, for example. And therefore, we have, for example, a very low cost level when it comes to transaction cost. But yes, it is a topic. And we have not, for all these questions, the perfect full-fledged answer right now. This is also something we have to be very honest. Yeah.
Toby, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think if you look at Ethereum, where the gas fees have got so high when the actual price of Ethereum's got so high as well, so it is a big issue. I honestly think Ethereum never expected to be valued as high as it is, which could be part of it. But at EnergyWeb, I mean, we can adjust our gas fee actually. So if the token price increases, we can actually decrease the gas fee, the transaction cost of interacting and sending transactions on that network. And I think there's lots of also, like, yeah, as you say, layer 2 that can come on top of the blockchain and actually like aggregate transactions together and then submit them all at once. So it's a great question. I think it really is an issue, but I think it can be and will be solved.
So I'm afraid our time is drawing to a close. But before we finish, I did want to maybe ask you to share one final sort of pearl of wisdom with us in the room, really from a personal perspective, about what's the one lesson you've each taken away in terms of building a blockchain ecosystem. So I don't know, Sabine, if I can start with you.
One lesson to take away, I think for me, what we're doing here is fundamentally changing the way an industry interacts and collaborates with each other. And that is extremely exciting. And I think for me, the biggest lesson in that is how to build blockchain ecosystems and how to be really careful on how you bring partners together, how you create this open facilitation of innovation, and how you, as companies in the energy sector, we actually lower our boundaries of the way we traditionally are used to working together. And we move into this new world where we're more open to collaborate. We have these open innovation ecosystems. And I think the more we focus there, open source code, open transformation, collaboration, I think the results will be a lot faster than going alone, which we still see a lot in the energy sector happening. That'll be my part.
Thank you. Toby?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the collaboration importance and creating an ecosystem where you can all benefit from shared functionality. I guess one learning on top of that then would be don't use blockchain unless you really need to, unless there really is a value for it. In the beginning, we had lots of companies wanting to use blockchain because it was very exciting and interesting, but it's costly, it's expensive, it's not better than centralized databases in many solutions. It's better in certain ones, it's much better. But yeah, don't use it unless it really is adding value to your business.
Yeah,
Sophia?
that's important. Patience, especially with enterprise companies. No, sorry. But I totally agree with you. And maybe one additional point, sometimes it's painful for me to say that because Germany, UK, we are really well-developed countries. But what we also learned during our roadmap is also to look into emerging markets like Nigeria or also Latin America, because they have totally different system structures and also different concept of trust, right? And what we learned is that sometimes speed and also the openness or willingness for such new technologies, especially on peer-to-peer interaction, is totally different than compared to Germany, for example, where I'm coming from. And this is what we learned also, that we open our scope. For example, also tested a product stream in Nigeria, and let's see how this will develop. So also be open when it comes to an amazing, a rich world, right? And don't focus too much on only one market or one company, because as we said earlier, it's really the opportunity of building a totally new ecosystem, also a global one.
That's brilliant. So being open to new markets, being really thoughtful about when you use blockchain and when it's not relevant, and last but very much not least, actually building thoughtfully an ecosystem collaboration. Hope you'll join me in thanking Sabine, Toby and Sophia for that great panel.